Welcome, everybody, to another edition of A Conversation With here on Severe MMA. I am E. Spencer Kyte, and I am delighted to be joined by UFC welterweight and analyst Michael Chiesa. Mav, how's it going, man? Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, dude, it's been long overdue. I'm sorry about that, but it's like, of course,
You're busy. You got a lot going on these
it's kind of like
days.
I'm busy, but it's like I'm like, man, when I don't have a fight, like it's like I know that this is a big prominent part of what we do. So it's like, I know that we're going to talk about more than fighting, but I'm like, I want there to be a little more meat on the bone. So I got myself a fight, so we got a lot to talk about. So I'm really looking forward to this. Long overdue.
We do, and I appreciate you being here. We are going to start, as always. I know the answer to this a little bit because I've done my research and I've prepped up on this.
Yeah.
But I want to hear the story anyways because it's a good story.
Yeah.
When did you fall in love with combat sports and MMA?
Well, man, I remember being at Jeff Arnold's house, and he was a kid that lived on the other side of the block, and we're hanging out at Jeff Arnold's house, and his dad is like, we're in the basement of their house. His dad's like letting us watch this thing on TV. And I remember holding the VHS, for you kids that don't know what a VHS, that's what came before DVDs, came before streaming. It was like a cassette tape that you'd watch movies on. But man, I
had the poster on the front and had the explanation of everything on the back. Yeah.
I feel really dated right now. But his dad was like, hey, I'll let you guys watch this, but when it gets bloody, you got to leave the room. But I remember watching, there was just like this little guy in this karate suit, and he's taking on all these big guys. And I remember looking at the way the VHS tape looked. Fast forward a few years, and I'm down at the movie store where you could rent VHS tapes. And I'm just stumbling through like the action sports aisle, like looking at skate videos and stuff. And I found that cassette, that VHS tape. I was like, oh my God, this is that fighting thing. I was telling all my buddies about this. Like, dude, it's crazy. There's this little scrawny dude. He's fighting these big guys. It's the craziest thing you've ever seen. So then it took me like a couple years after that to bribe my mom, my biological mother, not the mother that people know today. It took me a couple years to bribe her, like, hey, let me freaking rent this. And it wasn't until I started wrestling that finally I got her to cave. And I was like, look, Kevin Jackson's on here, and he coached a clinic that I went to as a kid after he won the Olympics.
When you can make the connection, it makes it easier for parents of like, well, shit, he's got me cornered here.
I convinced her, brought it home, and I watched Kevin Jackson get smoked in like a minute by Frank Shamrock. And I was like, wow, that was intense. Like, holy crap, this is a guy, Olympic gold medalist, just got smoked in like a minute, but with a guy on his back, so it was so, for me, perplexing. So from that point on, I was hooked. And, and by that time, I think I was in about 7th grade when I watched that fight. And then I was hooked on Frank Shamrock, and I watched him beat Igor Zinoviev when he exploded his collarbone with that big slam. And that my love really took off from there. And I think kind of a part of like my infatuation with that was like, I always wanted to be like a tough guy, and I never really was. I was a really scrawny kid. I got picked on a lot. So I feel like I took shelter in like watching like the Rocky movies or watching Bloodsport. Like I was always just kind of infatuated with fighting and fighting movies and stuff. I think I just really wanted to be a tough guy growing up. And fast forward 20 years, I guess you could say maybe I kind of
you're a bit of a tough guy. You're a bit of a tough guy, but you're also not like the tough guy like as people would think of like, just a meathead tough guy that's looking to get in fights. You've applied it, but I know before wrestling and even before MMA, obviously, skateboarding was the dream. Skateboarding was the goal. What got you hooked on skateboarding, and what sort of was the thing that kept you there as this is something I want to pursue? Because I know you've picked it back up again in the last few years. So what's the hook of skateboarding?
Man, so I really looked up to my cousin a lot, my cousin Patrick. And he was a skater kid, and so I wanted to be like my cousin Pat. I got a skateboard, and I had like, a little backstory that like not a lot of people know about. And as I kind of get to this like later stage of my career, there's like certain things I want to touch on that I've kind of left out because I just don't want them to overshadow what I'm trying to do now. But I grew up in a really very harsh circumstances, very harsh situation. My parents were divorced. So I was living with my biological mom at the time, who's, you know, she's a huge alcoholic, did a lot of other things. So I got a skateboard for Christmas, and I discovered that every time I went out, and I had an excuse to leave the house. I was like, and not to mention, I fell in love with it. It was really challenging. It was a hard sport. Like, it was really like it was the first thing I fell in love with. Like, the second I put my feet on a skateboard and ate shit and hit the pavement, I was like, wow, I love this. This is like, it's so hard. I want to be really good at it. I want to learn how to do a kickflip. I want to impress my cousin's friends and him. But then I slowly discovered that I had an excuse to leave the house. And sometimes I couldn't do that. Like, if it's like, I just want to go stay at a friend's house and get myself out of this environment, I just couldn't do it. But if I was like, hey, I want to go across the street and skateboard, like, it got me out of the house. It got me out of the environment that I was in. And I always love the challenge of skateboarding. I say, me and Eric Spicely, who used to fight in the UFC, as you know, we always say that, like, skateboarders make really good fighters because you just learn how to take abuse and just like get back up. It's a punishing sport. You know, and I had guys like, and it's crazy to think that, like, my love for skateboarding, my favorite skateboarder of all time was Danny Way. You know, and I attach myself to his story a lot. I followed him a lot growing up as much as I could, got his shoes, got his skateboards, stuff like that. And fast forward, as time has gone on, my love for skateboarding and me being such a fanboy of athletes across sports, I actually got to meet Danny Way in 2019, and I absolutely lost it. I mean, I was like a blubber man. I was like moment. It was like the MJ fever, you know, the girls that see Michael Jackson, like, oh my God, they faint. Like, I met Danny Way, and like, it was like a pivotal moment for me, because I was like, dude, I like took refuge in like your story, and I followed skateboarding because of you, and you know, and so many things kind of swirling around that guy. So it's cool how things in life can sometimes come full circle all through this path of martial arts. So yeah, but skateboarding was the first love of my life. The first time I ever felt true love. I was like, oh my God.
Well, and it's funny to me, but I understand it, because you said the first time I ever ate shit, I fell in love. You have picked 3 sport pursuits where it's just the only way to get better is to be crappy to start and get your ass handed to you and have to go back and drill and drill and drill and repetition. Like, skateboarding is one of those things that I could never do, because I don't have that kind of consistent failure makes me want to go back and do it more. It eventually would hit a point for me where I'm like, no, I'm not just continuing. It's like golf for me. I enjoy going out and playing, but you have 2 bad rounds in a row, and it's just like, nope, they're going in the garage for the rest of the year. Screw that.
I picked up golf last year, dude, and I know the feeling. Like, it's like, oh my God, like.
But it's another one of those things that when you work on it,
one good shot, when you hit one good one, you can have a bad round, but if you hit one good shot, it keeps you coming back for more.
Yeah. What is it about that sort of pursuit for you, those sorts of endeavors, that just sinks in for you, that roots in you of, no, I'm not dealing with not being able to do this thing. I'm going to set these little goals and chase them all down, because I'm sure wrestling was the same way. Obviously, MMA is the same way. BJJ, all of those different things are progressionary activities. What is it about that type of thing where it's not an immediate reward, it's a pain and punishment eventually leads to reward, that works for you?
You know, I just think when I look back and like the choice, aside from golf, I mean, golf's like the only thing that's like it's not punishing on the body. But obviously that's something I picked up as an adult. But like you said, like the 3 main things I picked up through the course of my life that led me to this point was skateboarding, wrestling, and mixed martial arts. Yeah, I think if I said I'm a glutton for punishment, I think that would just be me trying to sound funny. But like, I think just growing up really tough and having to, like, physical abuse was kind of a norm for me in my house. Like, I had to absorb that a lot. And so maybe there's a reason why I gravitated towards these sports and these things that were so physically demanding. Like, I never clicked with basketball. My dad was a basketball player, college basketball player, really good ball player. I tried football, I tried baseball. I just could never make the connection. But I think something about just like something about things that were physical I had such an attachment to, and I've kind of wondered that myself. And I was never really that good at wrestling. I never really excelled the way I would have liked to. But I think that just the physical aspects of those things, especially the first two, wrestling and skateboarding, because those were things I started as an adolescent, like as a teenager. I think the fact that they were so physical, and I was so used to kind of having to deal with overcoming physical types of situations, I think that's what kind of led me to them. But it all came together perfectly for me. I'm like, I still pinch myself sometimes that this is like the life I'm living, like it's like I have so much gratitude and appreciation for where I'm at and where I've come from, that, there's a lot of people that came from the same circumstances that I did that never made it anywhere in life. So I got to pinch myself sometimes that I get to sit and talk to you and do these types of things, So I think that but going back to what you said, I just think it's how physically demanding they are, and just me feeling like I'm fit to absorb physical punishment, that I can progress at these things.
So I didn't remember, or maybe even know fully until I started doing research to sit down and talk to you again. The Vision Quest is based in Spokane. Like, it's so that makes it a little more understandable to me. The serious attachment for yourself. For those that don't know, Mike is from Spokane, Washington, born in Colorado, but raised and grew up and still resides in Spokane, Washington. Beautiful part of the country.
Yeah.
Not too far from me here, just outside of Vancouver. That's right. Yeah. We have that in common.
Yeah.
But I watched the trailer for Vision Quest again in prepping for this. Do you know that they sort of package it as a like coming of age romantic from the producers of Flashdance, and not so much this like grimy wrestling movie that every wrestler of a certain age is like, I am Loudon Swain and this is my life. Like, it's more about Linda Fiorentino for most people than it is the wrestling and getting that win.
It is so funny that it was packaged like that. And it's funny because I just watched the trailer for the first time in my life the other day, because I've recently started listening to records. Like, my wife got me a record player for Christmas. I got a golf simulator in my garage. So that's kind of my thing at night. Like, I go in there, put on a record, play some golf. And I found a Vision Quest vinyl. Nice. And I sent a picture of it to my buddy Sam, who's kind of into the vinyl scene as well. And I was trying to look up a Vision Quest quote to send it to him, because we were just shooting quotes back and forth to each other. And I watched the trailer on YouTube, and I was like,
right,
this is not.
This is not the movie I remember from my youth, of this guy who cutting weight and the big fight at the end was shooting. Like, it's not the movie that you think it is.
It's funny though too, because where I live, like, that's like a lot of guys I grew up with, like, that's like their dad or their uncles, like, claim to fame, like, oh, I was an extra in the movie. Like, if you pause the scene when Loudon Swain was climbing the pegboard, oh, hey, see, there's my dad's head's right there. Like, it's a big claim to fame for a lot of guys around here, but it's it's a big deal for me. Like, I was one of those kids that just, like, I attached myself to the Rocky stories, the Vision Quest movies, the blood sports, the things like that. But I mean, it's funny that movie that was packaged as like a coming of age, like romance thing, like every badass wrestler on the planet that can absolutely tear your head off is like, loves that movie. Like, it's
packaged as it's packaged as the mysterious girl from New Jersey shows up to town and sidetracks him because he can't focus on his training.
No, and it's funny, he's got a best friend named Cooch, which just seems so like Cooch and Coochie, like, kind of. I don't know if that was intentional, or if that just like, if they just kind of like that flew over their head.
It's perfect. You mentioned a little earlier on that you've started now talking about some of this family stuff, and one of the things that where I've learned some of this stuff is listening to your interview with Fitz earlier, I think a couple of years ago now. But it's your family situation to some extent has been front and center throughout your career. Obviously, everybody was introduced to you through The Ultimate Fighter Live. I will not call it season 15. It is a very different season than the rest of them. It is The Ultimate Fighter Live.
Let's go.
It was the 15th season, but it's The Ultimate Fighter Live. Shouts to John Anik for always making sure to make that point clear. A lot of us were introduced to you and saw your story play out with your father's passing. walk me through, if you can. I mean, it's been several years now. It's been 11, 12 years. Just that process, because obviously your dad was sick for a long time. You guys had the conversation of, hey, I might have this opportunity. It was one that you held on to and you were looking forward to for a long time.
Yeah.
Can you just walk me through sort of the memories of that period and the last, not necessarily the last conversations with your dad, but just the difficulty of that? Because for the life of me, I couldn't imagine going through that in that situation where here's my dream, but here's this other thing. And I've got to make this choice at 23, 24.
Well, it's, first and foremost, rest in peace, Mark Augustine Chiesa, gone too soon. And I look back, there was a period of time where I was like, why is this happening to me? And I think everybody kind of goes through that. And, before I kind of take a trip back, 11 years, kind of want to say just out front right now that I feel like I've figured out why this happened to me. And it's about, like, now I know how to help my friends that are going through the same circumstance. Like, I have a buddy of mine who just lost his father, and I feel like that's my why. It's like, this happened to me so I can be here to help other people. Now, would I give everything in the world back? I'd give all this, everything I just said. I have so much gratitude for this life, fighting, my progressing broadcasting career, all of this stuff. I would package it all together and I would hand it to the powers that be. If I could have my dad back for a day, I would do it without even thinking twice about it. But that's part of my why this happened to me, is because now, after being kind of seasoned and having dealt with this for so many years, like, now I know how to handle my friends or the people that need help. Like, when someone reaches out to me, like, I just, I lost a parent, I don't know what to do. I know how to handle that. I know what that turmoil feels like. I know that pain. And that's part of my purpose now, is to help these people in their grieving process. It just came at such an expense. And it's just like, we're almost to that 11-year mark this March, since my dad has passed on, since my whole journey with the UFC started. But it was, my dad didn't really agree with what I was doing in life. When I said, he told me, you're either going to go to college or you're going to work a full-time job. So I bagged college, got a job, and just wanted to start pursuing mixed martial arts. And I think my parents thought I was like chopping boards. Like, I think I'm like, yeah, guys, I'm fighting. I'm training for fights. They're like, yeah, sure, son. Sounds great. Like, I don't think they realized the magnitude of what I was trying to get myself into. So my first amateur main event, they finally came and watched me fight. And I fought this guy, Clint Teeples, state champ from, I think, Newport, north of Spokane. And I was getting my ass beat so bad. Like, we're talking, I am grounded on my back, absorbing so much punishment that my nose was smashed, and it was smashed in a way that I wasn't bleeding out my nostrils. It was stuck on my back. So I'm literally pooling. I can't get up off bottom. I'm drowning in my own blood. If like, for free, this is an amateur fight.
Right. This is an amateur fight.
Oh, I get up and I spit out the biggest puddle of blood. We're talking like, it looked like I vomited, just like red. My dad was like running around the ring, like pushing people out of the way, yelling at me. And by the end of it, he was just like, you're done doing this. You're not, my son is not going to do this sport. And I was just like, I'm too far in now. Like, right. It's either you got to get with it or not. And it got to that point where he got back on board. It's hard to watch a kid fight. I can't imagine. Like, I don't have children of my own, but my poor parents, my poor parents, like,
right.
Like,
it's one thing to think of these sports parents that are like watching their kids play basketball or soccer. My brother grew up playing competitive hockey, so I've seen my dad freak out on referees. It's got to be a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
To just see your son or daughter in there,
my mom
taking shots.
She supports me wholeheartedly. Like, my mom, right. She's one of my biggest supporters, but she'll still say the best day in her life will be the day that I quit fighting. But anyway, so I'm starting to really gain traction with this. My dad's behind me. He's supporting me. He knows what this means to me. and I turned pro, and I'm starting to, I win my first pro title, and it's right as I was starting to train for that first pro fight on my mom's birthday, I get this phone call. It's my mom, and she's crying, and I'm like, "What's going on?" And I just recently told this story when we were shooting the Stuart Scott piece for the Orlando show, for Stuart Scott Week, for the Jimmy V Foundation and stuff. And I was getting ready to go on a run, and there's this neighborhood I lived in, rough part of town, but there's a hill called Carnahan Hill, really steep rolls, and then it goes up real steep, just a straight shot. And I tried to run it one time, and I just got cooked. And I'm getting ready to try again. I'm starting training camp for Matt Coble, my first pro title. Like, I'm gonna have to learn how to dominate this hill. I'm tying up my running shoes. My mom calls me as I'm about to go out the door, and she broke the news to me. Like, we just left the doctor, your dad has cancer. And I blacked out. And when I came to, I could just tell in the tone of her voice that it was just not, I'm sure when you get the diagnosis of cancer, it's always going to come with a lot of emotions, whether it's a severe case or a minor case. It's always going to be, that's what comes with it. I don't even remember getting off the phone with her. I just remember coming to, and I was at the top of that hill, and I was sitting on the side of the road in the gravel, like hugging my knees, just sobbing. I just was like, that's a rough phone call to get, especially on your mom's birthday. So I remember going to my parents' house that day and talking to my dad. He was just so nonchalant. Like, I remember we were standing out on the patio, we were cooking food on the barbecue, and he was just like, dude, this is going to be fine. Don't even sweat it. You keep doing what you're going to do. I'm going to go do treatment in Seattle. We got a plan. Don't sweat it. You need to continue to do what you're doing. Because at this time, I'm undefeated as a pro. I'm like a full-time job, full-time fighter. Like, I'm going for it, and so this was June. And then, by the time I get done with that fight, I win. Now we're getting into the news breaking that they're doing tryouts for Ultimate Fighter. And my dad's going through this 100-day treatment, and it's just not looking, it's getting better, but it's not getting better. It's like, yes, there's certain parts of his health that are improving, but the cancer is not getting better. So then, he just stay in Spokane. He was doing treatment in Seattle, stay in Spokane. So I go to tryouts and make it through the interview process. You roll, and I didn't have a good roll. I literally I kind of got rolled up by Henry Martinez, who fought in the UFC. Like, I didn't really do that great. Made it through that, hit pads, made it through my interview, came home, and it was like, yeah, things are looking good, but I just was not excited. It's just, how do you get excited? Like, right. I don't think I knew the extent of what the season was going to be, of it being 13 weeks. But I knew what it entailed because of my teammate Cody McKenzie, who was on season 12. So yeah, then I go back again and I do the next interview process, and I do really good. And they don't tell you then, they wait until like a week before,
right?
Like, they fly you out to tell you. And I had just like a pit in my stomach the whole time. Like, and I'm coming home, and they're like, how'd it go? And I'm like, yeah, it went good. And they're like excited. I'm not, because I just know, right, like, by this point, I know, like, if I'm
going to get this call and I'm going to need to go.
Yeah, I'm going to lose my dad
in this spot.
I'm going to lose him no matter what. It wasn't for sure that he was terminal, but it was like, things weren't getting better. So there was this one specific day, and I feel like this is where I just had I had a lot of crossroads. Kind of, it was a pivotal day for me in a lot of regards. I was at work when I still worked at King Beverage, and I was getting on. I remember this just so vividly to a T. I'm in my little Toyota truck, and I'm getting on the freeway from the Sprague entrance to get on the freeway. And my sister calls me, and she's sobbing. She's like, you need to get to the hospital right now. And this is after I knew, like, the second interview went good, and I'm like, without being told I'm on. And she calls me, and she's bawling. She's like, you need to get to the hospital right now. Dad's in ICU. You need to get there now. And I'm like, oh. So I'm like beelining on the freeway. And at the rate after I hang up with her, my biological mom, who I still had somewhat of a relationship with at the time, called me, and she said some she called me and I was emotional and I was like, you're picking a bad time to call and yell at me. She was just calling just to talk shit. And I just was like, told her what was going on. I was like, you're picking a bad time to call. I'm on my way to the hospital. If you want to call and chew me out and call me names, you can do it at a later time. And she said some things about my dad that I will never forgive her for. And that was the day that I severed all ties with her. Like, we don't talk. There's no communication. I cut her out of my life at that point. So it's like, as I'm losing both my parents at the same time. And thank God that I have my mom, the mom that everybody knows today. You know, Teresa Chiesa. Everybody's baffled when I tell them, like, that's not my birth mother, but that's my mother, because we actually kind of look the same. But I severed ties with my birth mother on that day. And I remember going into the ICU and the lights were off. It was just my mom and my aunt there. And I went in the room and I grabbed my dad's hand and I was just like, hey, dude, it's me. And the first thing he said, very first thing before he talked about the family, anything, the very first thing he said to me is, he's like, you have to promise me, no matter what happens to me, you have to follow through with your dreams. You cannot, because he knew that I was having reservations about going. And that was the first thing he said before he said, take care of the girls. You're the man. Like, you're going to be the man of the family, this and that. That came second. He said first, you follow through with your dreams no matter what happens to me. So shortly after that, I found out I was on. And then, I literally had to have a conversation with my dad. And at this time, we knew he was terminal. He was going on hospice. You know, we're basically on borrowed time. He was still coherent. He could still walk around the house. You know, it's just, we knew, like, the end is near. And I'll never forget just standing at the front door of my parents' house. Juliana Pena was out front in her white Ford, picking me up to take me to the airport. And she was waiting out front. And we basically just had to be like, this is it. You know, like, we had a good run. You know, it was a tough conversation to have. Yeah. It's like, you know, I feel like I hugged him for like 2 hours, you know, but it was just I had a flight to catch, you know, so it was tough, dude. It's tough. It took me 11 years to be able to talk about it this candidly, you know, but it's part of my story. And I guess this story is kind of something that can help other people. And that's, like I said, going back to what I was saying before, like, it's kind of part of my purpose. I got to tell this story. I got to help other people. Even if it's only one person, then my job is done. So rough ride, but it all came together on my mom's birthday, June 1st, 2012, a year from the date that I got the phone call that my dad had cancer. I won the finals on The Ultimate Fighter against Ally Quintus. So it's crazy how life pans out like that.
It is wild. And I do appreciate you sharing it and being candid. I do think it is important, as you said, that, you know, figuring out how to use those things. We all go through trials. We all go through challenges. Mm-hmm. How can we use them to help other people around us? I know you are doing that. It is extremely commendable.
Thank you.
To turn your pain and your challenges into positives for others. Mm-hmm. You mentioned having a little bit of an idea of what The Ultimate Fighter is going to be like because of Cody McKenzie. Shout out to the AK Kid.
Yeah.
But like, Tough Live was a whole different, because normally, for people that don't know, normally The Ultimate Fighter is like 6 or 8 weeks.
Yeah.
And it's just stretched out when you see it on TV into like 3 months where everything, and you think it's just playing out. No, it's taped in 6 weeks. You go to Vegas and you fight a couple of times and then you come home and you're home while everything's airing. Mm-hmm. You guys are gone for 13, 14 weeks. I mean, chaos, mental challenges, like stuck, like I can't be stuck in a house with my in-laws and close friends for like a long weekend. Yeah. So I can't imagine 13. At least you had Sam with you.
Yeah.
Keeping you company, and helping you level out, always having a sidekick there. But like, just put me in the house, like walk me through being in the house with an incredible cast, a ton of fighters that made it to the UFC, and have had successful careers overall. But 13 weeks of just dudes that everybody is going for the same goal. Everybody's looking for that tiny little edge. What the hell was that like, man?
Well, here's what made it easy. We didn't have any characters. We had fighters.
That's true.
That's true. What made it like, if it was 13 weeks and you throw in one Junie Browning, all hell's
right. You get Julian Lane in there and it's just like, nope, I can't stay. I gotta go.
that's just a ticking time bomb. Like everybody that was there to fight. Everybody that was there had goals. Like, you know, and I think that that's what made it easy, is even the people that didn't make it on into the UFC, like everybody stayed the course. Like everybody stayed training. Everybody, even people that lost, you know, in the early rounds of the tournament, stuck to training. So that I think that that's what kind of kept everything together. Didn't make for the best television. And to be quite frank, there's so much shit that went on that season that didn't even make it on like the extras part of the DVD. It's beyond me. Like, I feel like when we hit like the 15-year anniversary,
they'll put out
they gotta like roll out.
So
like, dude, they don't know about the blow dart guns we made. Like, there's so much crazy shit we did. It was like not like drinking antics, but just like cabin fever type stuff.
Right.
And the crazy thing is about with Sam being on the show, how many times in history is really two teammates from the same small city made it on the same reality show? Like, you know, and it wasn't even like they put us there to try to make TV to get us to fight. It was just, we were both good fighters. We were both, you know, they're looking for the cream of the crop. And, but we didn't get to spend as much time with each other as you would think. Like the training times really overlapped each other and not a lot of time at home. And those goddamn cameramen are in your face all the time. Like if I'm needing like some time, like, you know, obviously I'm dealing with a lot of stuff. Like there's so much on my plate. And like, I even breathe. It's like, they can even read my mind when I'm about to talk to them about it. It's like the second I'm about to be like, dude, it's like camera, microphone. So, you know, but it was great to have him, just to have his presence there was just like, it was, I felt very fortunate. But I just think that like, you know, there wasn't as much chaos as previous seasons, but that's just like I said, there was no characters. It was 16 fighters. I mean, and some people found out throughout the course of the season, maybe they weren't fit to be fighters. And I'm not going to name any names. That's not what I'm here to do. But I think that over the course of those 13 weeks, there's guys that really found out if they really want to stick to this lifestyle or not. And some of those guys fought a few times after that and then kind of fizzled out. And that's fine. That's life. This is not, I'll never knack somebody for like hanging it up at any point in time, whether it's too early or too late, like to each their own. This is a rough road. This is a hard path to follow. But I think a lot of people found out pretty quick, you know, at 13 weeks being stuck there, like if this is really what they want to do for a greater part of their life. So
yeah, 13 weeks would be a long camp, even if it's just at home, surrounded by your team, surrounded by your usual creature comforts, to then be in a house outside of your normal environment, all those cameras, all the lights, all the everything. I can understand why it's a real test for a bunch of people. Even the 6-week version is a serious challenge, and it takes a lot to get through. I've talked to a lot of Ultimate Fighter alums. It takes a lot, and you can never understand it fully unless you've been through it. And I would imagine that sort of colors a little bit of your understanding of some of these guys, as you're saying, that if they choose not to do it, I get it.
Yeah. It's a rough way to find out, you know, is being stuck there. And dude, 13 weeks, like 6 weeks is tough. Any amount of time where you're secluded is going to be challenging. But like, I remember getting out of the house after I fought James Vick and I needed a phone charger. So I'm like, first In-N-Out burger. I want an In-N-Out burger. I don't care that I'm fighting in a week. I want an In-N-Out burger. So In-N-Out burger first, and then Walmart for a phone charger. And I haven't been in society in 3 months. Like I'm in the van and they're playing music and I'm like, what song is this? I've never heard this before. They're like, you've never heard this? It's on the radio all the time. I'm like, dude, I just got out of like 13-week lockdown, bro. Like I walked into Walmart and stopped. Like right when I walked in, I got like 15 feet in the door. My eye is like swollen shut almost because Vic dropped me in the semifinals fight. I'm still in my fight shorts, which are like mid-thigh, hairy. I got like a rosary on, like, you know, like it's like, I don't even know. Jesus just left like a Richard Simmons aerobic class look. You know what I mean? Like literally like long hair,
full
rosary,
old school
short
wild
shorts,
man Mike Chiesa,
tight shirt, like, and I just stopped. I was like, what the fuck is is this? Like, I just like forgot what it was like to be in like a busy place in public. It was like, I had to like regroup myself for a sec. Like, okay, where do I find a phone charger? Like, what do I do? Like, then I get to my hotel room and I have the TV on. I got the music on. I'm talking to my sister on the phone. Like every single thing I didn't have before, I'm like doing it all at once. I'm like reading a magazine, like
just binging everything.
Yeah, like all this crazy stuff. But man, that whole journey for me really it cemented me. Like I want this lifestyle so bad. Like I just like to get like I came from a good camp. I'm still at the same camp with Rick Little at Sick Jitsu, but like, you know, I trained with guys like Cody McKenzie and Lyle Beerbaum and spent time training with Dennis Hallman and, you know, when he was in his heyday. So I had been around good guys. But like to go be around Uriah Faber, who was just a mega star at the time, and the whole Team Alpha Male squad. And I'm teammates with guys like Ali Quinta, Cristiano Marcelo, former shootbox coach, you know, and then Al, who is a guy, and I'm not just saying this because we fought in the finals, but like he's a guy that I looked up to a lot on the show, because it's like, this is a guy like, I need to do whatever he's doing because he's the best guy on our team. Like the way he approached his training, his attitude, like he kicked my ass so bad sparring one day that I like was turning away from him to the coaches, like throwing my hands up, like, I don't know what you want me to do. I can't get this guy off me. And from that point going forward, I trained with him every round I could. And it was like all of these things that were challenging, like made me want this lifestyle even more. And so it's like, it was there were some people that learned that maybe this isn't what they wanted to do. And then there was guys like myself that were like, hell yeah, I'm about that life. Bring it on. And you even look at guys that didn't even make it on, like Drew Dober, so tough. And he, like, if that wasn't a 5-minute fight, no disrespect to Darren Cruikshank, like no disrespect. If those weren't 5-minute fights to get into the house, we might have had a different castmate, because I mean, Dober was coming back in that 5-minute round, but it's crazy to see what guys.
Yeah, it's fun to go through the list.
Lost in the first round,
Yeah, if you go through early seasons when there were the elimination fights and you can look and see who didn't get there, there's a whole nother wave of like really talented fighters that didn't quite get there.
Yeah, like, John Tuck. John Tuck was Joe Silva's pick to win it. That's what I was told, was Joe Silva had John Tuck picked to win it. And who did John Tuck lose to? None other than Raging Al, baby.
I mean, I'll tell you right now, Cristiano Marcelo was my pick. I was like, shoot a box coach. He's going to come in and rip up these kids that don't have it. Yeah, no.
I love that
guy. I got the winner sitting here with me on a conversation with now.
I love that guy. Cristiano Marcelo is like, he was like the father of the children. He was like one of the older guys.
Right.
But it's like,
he's the big brother that's kind of keeping everybody in line a little bit.
Yeah. And then like for us, like we're all like in our 20s. Like none of us really have, like, we're cycling through the same stories. Like we don't have TV, we don't have magazines. So like if you want entertainment, you're like, Cristiano, tell us a story.
Right.
Tell us a story about shootbox. Tell us the story. Who held the kick pad when you guys practice stomps? Like, tell us the stories. Like, so it's like, it was always good to have Cristiano on our team. And he's a guy like, you know, there's certain friends you have in life that you don't see often, but when you do, it's like you pick up
ball right back in. Yeah.
Yeah. I miss that guy tremendously. He's one of a kind.
You mentioned training at Jiu-Jitsu, still being there, having come up with some of the original guys. You yourself are now one of the veteran guys, and you've seen some teammates and even some people that were there for a bit, but still are in the area, like Terrence McKinney, come forward. What's it been like for you to see this next wave of Spokane? And we've talked about Spokane before, that there has to be something in the water. There has to be something in the water.
It's the aquifer.
Because it's a big, small town.
Yeah.
Where there's nothing around. And yet all of these talents making it to the highest levels of this sport. What's it like for you to see first? I mean, we've all seen what it meant to you when Julie won the title.
Yeah. I have a scar. One of my eyes, I have a nick from that whole incident.
Yeah, we're always going to remember what it meant to you to see Julie win the title. But what's it mean to see guys like Bam Bam and to see Terrence McKinney and just more kids from Spokane that you have a long-term connection with coming up and following a trail you helped blaze, having success now at this level and being able to contribute to that for them?
It's humbling because I know how much some of my role models meant to me, and I don't know how much these guys look up to me. Even if they do it all, I don't know, but I just know, like, the way I looked at the guys that were ahead of me when I was making my way up, and you want to try to do as they do. You see the success they have, and you want that for yourself. Um, it, it it's an honor to play a small part. When you talk about a kid like Terrence McKinney, he was a wrestler at Shada when I first started coaching. Seeing him, have the success he did in high school, have to battle the trials and tribulations in life to get himself into the UFC, it doesn't surprise me. I mean, the kid has more God-given talent in his one finger than I do in my whole body. Like, he is a very gifted athlete. And I knew that even as he was a wrestler, that this kid was something special. And it's cool when he says, like, I wanted to walk your line. Like, I was his coach, and he wants, because of me, that's what made him wanting to get into mixed martial arts. And it's very humbling. And I don't take it lightly. Like, it means a lot to me. When it's all said and done, obviously the ultimate goal for me is still to win a world title. I'm still in the mix with some of the best guys in the world. I still think that when the day comes I win that title, I still don't think it'll mean as much to me as it will to help play a role in some of these young fighters' careers. And then you got a guy, in Brady, who's a staple to our team now, just a young, hungry kid who's, like, doing every single thing right. Like, even better than I did it before. And I feel like when I was his age, I mean, I didn't get in the UFC until I was 24. He's 22, 23 years old. He's already bought a house. He's already building it out to do a duplex. He's training 3 times a day. Like, he's making the right decisions with his fighting career, with his life, to maximize this opportunity. It's just so great to see. And then there's another one that's coming up that soon people will talk about. That's Ashton Charlton. This kid, he's another one of those people. And I'm not saying it because he's my teammate. We got a stable of good guys coming up. But Ashton's someone that's like, you want to talk about the hunger. You want to talk about the fire. He's the kid that comes in the gym with just wide eyes and open ears, just absorbing every stitch of knowledge. Like, you would be surprised. Even the smallest little things I'll say to him that were so minuscule, he'll bring them up to me months down the road. And I'm like, wow, I cannot believe you really picked up on that. And it's still stuck with you. So he's another one of those kids making his, he'll be in the big show in a matter of a year, if that. But it's as important for me to help these people as it is for me to progress myself, because what is your legacy if you're very selfish and you do everything just for you? Like, even when you win the title and your time in the spotlight comes to an end and you're just by yourself and you have none of these spoils, you don't have the riches to share with other people. Like, what does it matter? Like, so for me, I take a lot of pride in, like, wanting to help bring these guys along and do everything I can to help them achieve their dreams and just get to where they want to be in life, because it's having good mentors and having people help show you the way. It's crucial. So I take a lot of pride in, like, putting these guys on my back. That's like this training camp. Like, I'm taking them with me. I'm like, hey, we're going to Las Vegas. I'm taking the team with me. I'm taking Spokane and we're going to Las Vegas. Like, so I have to have the city with me. I got to have these guys with me because it's good for me. It's good for them. And I just,
you get the surroundings, you get the people that you're used to being around. Not that you're not used to the crew in Vegas, because you've been training at Syndicate for a number of years, but you get those Spokane touches, and they get the exposure. And to me, it's always been great to see over the years fighters do that, right? Bring the next generation along and get them that exposure to these different elements that they're not there yet for their own career, but they get a little taste of it and they get to be around it and they get to see it and see what it's like at that highest level, that it does, as you said, sort of trickle down and take root, even if they are still 2-3 years away, whatever it may be, from getting there themselves.
Yeah. And for me, dude, I have one goal left to achieve. There's only one thing left for me. I have one thing left as a competitor. I've done it all except for one thing. I'm very adamant in my belief that it's going to happen, and it all starts April 8th. It all starts with, making another run, giving myself another shot at this thing. I'm a few wins away from getting there. But the reality is, Spencer, I don't have to fight anymore. I really don't. Like I've had this is year 11 for me in the UFC. I've got a broadcasting career. I've made smart financial decisions throughout the course of my career. Like, I don't have to do this anymore, but I want to. And the big part of that it comes from these young guys. Like, I want to still achieve great things, not just for myself. I want to achieve great things for them, because if I'm bringing them along with me when I get to that ultimate prize and I get that belt wrapped around my waist and I bring them along with me, it's going to give them better odds to get there as well.
Right.
So it's, you can see why, that's why I got so emotional when Julie won, because it's like,
for sure,
for people that don't realize, like, just to get to a title fight, just to get to the dance, it's more than winning. It's like the planets got to align up. The universe has to be in sync with what you have going on in your life. Like, it's so hard, just to get there and then to win it against, whoever you're fighting for the championship is going to be a savage. It's going to be somebody that's an absolute killer. And you go take out the greatest women's combat sport athlete of all time. I mean, come on, a couple Modelo's deep, I'm jumping that rail, baby. But,
just a couple.
You think
it's one or two deep.
Well, and Pettis, my former foe, now friend, of course, he fed me a couple birthday shots, and then that's all she wrote, send me off. But yeah, it's like, even look at like Tony Ferguson. Like, dude, the guy won what, 12 fights in a row, 10 fights in a row, something crazy. Still never got to a true title fight.
Yep.
So there's so much that goes into it. And I want to bring one home, not just for it used to be all about me. Like, before I got married and before I became the guy that's like kind of the spearhead of the team, it used to just be like, I'm winning a world title for me. Like, it's all about me. Now I'm like, my purpose has gotten so much greater that it's like, now I don't even really want the title for me as much as I do for other people. I want to win this title for my wife, because that would give us a better life. I want to win this title for these guys that are coming up underneath me, that I'm trying to bring them up and do everything I can to help them with their career. I want to do it for Rick, get two-time world champion coach. Just to win one as a coach is tough enough. To get him a second one, and I think that's better for me than to make it so selfish, because this is a very selfish sport. And if you can find a way to branch out from that, I think it's a better thing. At least for me, it is. So having a greater purpose for my goals, it has been really good for me.
Mentioned in there still being in the mix, obviously a fight coming up in a couple of months against Li Jingliang. It will be your first fight in well over a year. Were there specific reasons why 2022 became a no appearances in the cage for Michael Chiesa? We saw a lot of you, and we'll get to the broadcasting career.
Yeah.
Because I know it's a thing you've been actively working towards and putting a lot of time into, and I want to talk about how they get an IFB in your ear.
Yeah.
But what was the reason? What kept you out of the octagon in 2022? If there were sort of specific things.
Yeah, there was. So after the Sean Brady fight, I told my wife, hey, I'll wait till after the wedding to fight. Let's plan the wedding, because she wants to do the flowers and the this and the that. And I'm like, there's this guy on the East Coast that wants to knock my head off and choke me. Like, I can't think about this stuff right now. Maybe I can think about the bachelor party, but the wedding, yeah. So I was just like, let me get done with this fight, and I'll take a break from competition until afterwards. And rightfully so. I had 3 fights in a year, 3 tough camps, from January 20th to November 20th. So we're talking 3 fights in 11
months.
Yeah. That's pretty challenging, especially when, like, people that know me know, like, these camps are tough. I'm not a guy that's like cutting corners. I don't take a lot of days off.
Well, and you're fighting monsters.
And
I'm fighting killers.
Yeah, I'm fighting the best guys in the world,
And we got to make sure to give you that part too.
Yeah.
It's not like you're fighting scrubs.
Yeah. So I commit to the time off. but I stay training, you know, we do the holidays. And then once the holidays get over, I start getting back in the gym, and I'm starting to change my mind, Spencer. I'm like, you know what? F this. Like, I was more fueled up still from the Luque fight than I was the Brady fight. And just being on I was talking about this with Rick the other day, that like the wins are so short-lived. Like, dude, for me, when I win, like the win is over the second I'm doing my post-fight speech, because I'm calling somebody out. Like, I'm notoriously, I always have a name in mind after I fight. So it's like the win is celebrated in this little small minute or two before I get the mic. And then I'm calling somebody out, and then I'm already on to the next challenge. Like, because I already next.
Right.
But when you lose, you marinate in that for so long. It's just like, yeah, it's tough, you know? So I get back to training after the holiday break from the Brady fight. And I'm just really stewing more on the Luque fight still, because it was just like the Brady fight I can hang my hat on a little bit, because it's like, dude, it was a tough fight, coin flip fight.
I mean, people can go back and watch the end of the Luque fight and just look at your reaction, and they will understand.
Yeah.
That is angry, disappointed Michael Chiesa. God damn it, I made a mistake and this guy caught me. I remember it from Seattle, Washington, and Jorge Masvidal.
Yep. The tactical error, beating myself, knowing what to not do.
I did something that I shouldn't do, and this dude was like, thanks very much. I'll take your neck.
God. Yeah. That one is
sorry to bring it up.
That's and God bless his heart. Luque is a great guy. Like, so it's nothing against him.
Yeah.
So it's just me as
one of the nicest savages in the world.
Yeah. It's like I beat myself again. You know, I just have this knack for that 4 or 5 win streak that, you know, murders row of 4 or 5 with Diego Sanchez, Carlos Condit, RDA, Neil Magny in a 5-round fight. So, but yeah, so I get done with the holidays, get back to training, and I'm like, screw this, dude. I'm fighting again. Like, I'm not in bad shape after I came back from the holidays. Like, I didn't lose anything, sparring, everything's going good. I'm over at the state tournament for the high school. I coach all day on my feet, and I've had a history of back problems for a long time. So, you know, it pulled me out of the Tony Ferguson fight in 2016. When I ruptured my L4, L5, almost had to have back surgery, really close. Like, it was very, very close to back surgery. And I'm glad I didn't, but I'm over at the state tournament coaching all day. I take a nap and I wake up and I'm like, I'm going to go lift. Cause in my mind, I'm like, I'm not missing workouts. I'm secretly plotting a return that I'm going to like spring on my wife. Like, I'm not going to be like, hey, I think I'm going to call Danny and ask for a fight. I was in my mind, like, hey, I'm going to just get in shape. And then, like, we're going to get a fight. I'm like, hey, babe, like, too good of an opportunity.
They called. And, yeah. So, unbeknownst to me, Danny organized this with Sean, and I've got a fight now.
It's what's best for my career. Think of the floral arrangements we can get with a win bonus, you know? So I take a nap. I go find like a 24-hour gym, and I'm going to lift weights. And it was just a simple shoulder press. I just load the bar up, put too much weight on, arms underneath it, press the bar. When I set the bar down, I was like, oh, I just got that weird feeling in my back. I was like, shit. Kind of starting to try to finish the workout, and I can't really bend over. And I'm with one of the assistant coaches, Eddie, and I'm like, let's, you know, I'll let him finish. And then we head back to the hotel. Lay down in bed, go to bed. The next day, I could not get out of bed on my own. My body was trashed. I was like, you have to help me up. Like, I had to have him help me put my socks on. I couldn't move I couldn't even look down with my head. Like, I was so locked up from the forehead, like, to my knees. Like, my body was just seized. And I was in bad shape. So I knew something was bad. And it was on that same side that I felt the pain. Went and got an MRI, herniated my L3, L4, the one below the disc I'd screwed up in 2016. So that, obviously, there's no way I'm fighting before the wedding. You know, a disc herniation can take anywhere between 6 weeks to like 9 months to heal on its own. And every time I would try to come back, it just would come back baring its teeth, you know? So it took me until probably, I mean, it was just like a couple months ago that I was like feeling comfortable enough to take a fight. And God bless the UFC PI staff. Like, Heather Linden's been like, she said that this is one of the more perplexing injuries she's ever had to deal with, because it's like we're getting all sorts of MRIs. Like I got a special MRI done that they only do on NFL players, where they literally took an image from like basically like my sternum all the way down to like my ankles, because they're like, there's something within your body that's not right. Like they still haven't figured it out, but just to where I'm at now, I can handle a camp. Like now it's just about pain management. Now I'm in this phase of my life, in my career, where I've never shied away from hard work. I'm the guy that's like, you usually have to be like, get the fuck out of the gym. You know, when you're in training camp, you're just doing more harm than good. So now I'm really learning on how to train appropriately. Like I'm learning how to train right, how to listen to my body, knowing that sometimes a little less is going to benefit you more. So yeah, but it was just a back injury, dude. It was a very painstaking process, dude. And of course, my dumb ass, like, oh, I feel good, I'm gonna go golf. Yeah, right. Smart
right. All kinds of twisting and
Smart
twerking
move,
is great for your
yeah.
back. Yeah.
You know, so but when it comes to the fight coming up on April 8th, I'm like, when people are like, oh, ring rust, time away, I don't even really think about that stuff, honestly. Like I've had long layoffs before due to injury, and I think that's all just a state of mind. You know, I've been doing this a long time, 11 years in the UFC, 15 years as a competitor in MMA. Like, I'm not worried about the layoff. We know how to train for these fights specifically, so we start with the intensity that's necessary to win. So, but it was a really long journey to get back here, Spencer. And if I will say there were times in 2022 where I was wondering, like, was the Sean Brady the last? Was that the last?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, are there times in there where, you know, as you said, got married now?
Yeah,
set yourself up pretty well.
Yeah,
throughout your fight career, you've got. Not that it's the exit strategy, but the next chapter of Michael Chiesa involved in the sport is still there. Plus, you've got coaching high school wrestling. If you decided to walk away, you've got stuff that can keep you engaged.
Yeah.
Were there points where it was, this really might be the end, and I might have to not quite go out the way that I want, and health just dictates that it's time to go?
Yeah, there was a lot of times. I mean, people say, like, you always hear Dana say, like, the second a fighter says the R word, like, he's done. Like, dude, right after I turned 30, I was like, well, retire's on the horizon, like, I'm not getting any younger. Like,
that's the one I love, when the 31-year-old's like, man, time's catching up to me.
Yeah,
I'm like,
dude, I can handle that reality, but it's like, it's tough when it's going against what I just said. I can handle that reality, but then as I'm going through 2022, when it's really more real than it ever could have been, and I'm like, fuck, this might be it. If I can't train right, like, there's so much risk that is involved in getting in a controlled fight. Like, there is so many things that can happen, and going into a fight compromised, it compounds the risk. Like, so for me, it was like, I'm not even healthy enough to take a chance to fight. Like, I'm not even healthy enough to try to do a training camp. Like, so yeah, there was definitely some times where I'm like, fuck, was this it? Like, God dang it. Like, I guess sometimes you can't always, be like Chris Lytle and go out on a win,
go out smashing it out with
Dan,
getting the bonus, right?
And I even thought that, dude. I was even like, man, at least the Luque fight, at least like the one thing I'll be remembered for was like that last good flurry, like I was having those conversations with myself, and I'm so glad that didn't hold true. It's like I don't feel like I'm on borrowed time by any means. I'm only 35, but it's just like a second shot of life where it's like, dude, oh my God, to remember where I was. It's like a year. Yeah, it's like a year today, basically, that when I hurt my back last year, because it was at the state tournament. The kids actually just headed over today. Unfortunately, I couldn't be there because I'm in training camp. But yeah, it was crazy to think, like, within the time between where we're at now, me and you talking in a year ago, I was having these conversations with myself that I might be done as a competitor. And thank God, I'm excited. I'm like, it's given me such an appreciation to be able to continue to still do this. So,
not that I want to usher you out the door, but how will you make that decision? Because obviously it's different for everybody.
Yeah.
Some people make it based on results. Some people make it based on body. what are the variables or the factors that will go into you making that decision when the time comes?
You know, there's a few things I've thought about. And this, like I said, these are things when anybody watching this can be like, oh my God, he's done. He's already talking
Well,
about
it's,
the R
it's
word.
funny,
But for
right?
me,
Because you mentioned the Dana thing.
I've shown that I'm a cerebral fighter. I'm not the smartest guy in the real world, but in the combat sports world, I like to think that I have above average intellect and intelligence. So I can handle those types of things, these
Right.
types of conversations. It's going to be when I don't get the feeling I feel now. I think that like it's like being in camp and this feeling like it's exhilarating, it's exciting. There's a lot of thrill that comes with it. I think that when that starts to fade away, I think that's when I'll be done. I think a lot of guys maybe overstay their welcome because they lose that thrill, but they don't have maybe an exit plan, or they don't know what they're going to do next. I honestly think that if I hung them up now and had no broadcasting career, I think I could get into real estate with my wife and be just fine. So it's like,
right.
I think some guys struggle with identity, and I can understand that. But for me, I am so blessed and fortunate and thankful that like I'll never have to worry about losing my identity as a fighter when I hang them up, because I'm going to be still involved with the sport. I'm still going to be doing pre and post fight shows for the UFC. I'm still going to be calling fights for LFA. I do believe in due time, I'll be sitting octagon side with Daniel Cormier and Joe Rogan and my boy Paul Felder calling fights. So I'll never lose my identity as a fighter. So I think it'll make that decision for myself a lot easier, because I think a lot of guys struggle with maybe they're losing their competitive fire, but they're not ready to let go of being a fighter. That's a big thing for these guys, for a lot of us,
Yeah, you mentioned it, and I like the phrasing of it, because I think that's a big part of it. Is a lot of people, their identity is solely as that fighter. And I talked to Dan Ige on this program a couple weeks ago, and he was like, I was so wrapped up in my life was wins and losses that I needed to step back from that, and I needed to get away from I'm high when I win and I'm low when I lose, and just be Dan, who is a professional fighter but has all these other things as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's the piece that some people struggle with. I mean, I've struggled with it professionally in my career, where it's, well, if nobody's reading me, am I really a writer?
Yeah.
If nobody's reading me, am I really any good at what I'm doing?
Yeah.
I mean, the answer is yes.
Yeah.
I'm pretty good at what I do.
Yeah.
But you have to learn to separate those things. And you've done so admirably throughout your career, and you planned to get to this next stage.
Mm-hmm.
How has the broadcasting journey been so far? What's the toughest challenge of being on the other side of things and having a camera pointing at you and somebody throwing to you saying, and what do you think here, Mike?
Well, two things were tough. One was cutting my mullet. That was legitimately.
I remember I asked why the mullet was gone, and you were like, look, I can't go on television with this big scraggly hair.
Yeah.
So I've got to look more presentable.
Zach Candido, who works for the UFC, people that don't know who Zach is, he's the guy that really he
runs the show.
He runs the show. Like, I'm trying to think of a really cool name for him. Like, the commander in chief of the broadcasting, he's like the guy. And he gave me a shot on Fox when I had my mullet. And then I never heard back from him for a few years. And I ended up cutting my hair. My girlfriend, who's now my wife, was pretty much like, all right, like, I love you for you, but you look a lot better with a haircut. So I did that. And then just sure enough, after the Condit fight, I get another shot to go, or no, yeah, it was the Condit fight. No, it wasn't the Condit fight. I think it was the RDA fight. Yeah, it was the RDA fight that I got to go on ESPN, and things took off from there. And Zach said, hey, I made a joke. I was like, so does this mean I could grow my mullet back? And he was just like, I'm just going to say that the boss right. Man, Dana, really likes the way you look right now.
Right. He's like, no, it means you can't.
But the really, in reality, that's just a joke. But the real challenge is, I knew what I wanted, and I spoke about it a lot. I put it out in the universe. And then you get there and then you realize it's there's a lot to it. And they don't give you like a cheat sheet. They don't give you a pamphlet to take home and be like, here's the terms you need to know. Like, here's, how long you get to talk. Like, you get there and it's like you're getting shot out of a cannon, and it's hard to get comfortable. Like, to talk while someone else is talking in your ear is pretty challenging. You'd be surprised. Imagine trying to make a point. And I tell people this all the time. Imagine that you're asked a question and you have 30 seconds to make a point, and you have to articulate that point while someone else is talking in your ear, and you can't miss a beat. It's going to be tough. And then the terminology and things like that. But I think that where people will fall short when they get their opportunity to do this is lack of preparation. And that's never been any problem for me when it comes to anything involving fighting in my life. Preparation is not a problem for me. Preparation is not a problem when it comes to training for a fight. I'm a guy that sometimes tends to over prepare, and it's the same thing for broadcasting. So while I was struggling to kind of get my feet underneath me to gain the confidence that I do have now, and even Zach would say it, like, yeah, there's a lot of things you could do better, but like the fact that we can tell how prepared you are is really good. So I think that like just preparation, it was like the crutch I could kind of lean on as I'm trying to gain traction. But it was tough. Those first few shows was hard. It wasn't until when Zach brought me out for Fight Island for a month that I had 3, like it was, because these shows are kind of spaced out. Like sometimes you'll have back-to-back weekends. Usually it's about one show a month, I'd say. But bringing me out for 3 shows back to back to back and have it end where I'm doing the Habib Gaethje fight, which was a huge fight. Like from that point going forward, I've never lacked confidence getting at the desk. Like I love it. I love when guys that I'm fighting or try to be like, I remember Neil said something to me like, oh, I'm going to send him packing into his broadcasting career or something. I'm like, what you guys don't realize is this isn't a hindrance. Like being in the broadcasting world has made me sharpen what has become one of my better weapons, which is my mind. Like I study all the fighters on the roster. I'm learning all sorts of new techniques that I don't need a coach to teach me. I'm learning it because I have to study these guys. I'm learning the nuances. I'm now studying my opponents from a different perspective that I wasn't before. Like this is when
you looked at Li Jingliang to break him down as an analyst.
Yes.
But it also gives you that time that you've spent watching tape of a guy that now you're going to be standing in there with.
Yes. And it's like, and not to mention, dude, like 90% of the shows I work are at the apex. Like I'm training the whole time. Like, it's not like I'm like on the road every weekend. Like, all right, Mike, you're coming to Vegas Thursday to Sunday. All right, cool. So I'm calling John Wood. I'm calling Andy Varela. Like, all right, let's train. Like, it's a paid training trip, dude. Like it's been awesome. Like it's been one of the better things for my career. It's helping me sharpen other weapons that I wouldn't have before. And the mind is very powerful. When you talk about a sport that's so physical, there's a reason why a lot of us say the sport's 99% mental. And I have this aspect to my life that is helping me sharpen that weapon, which is the most important weapon, which is your mind.
What's it like doing the roundup with Paul Felder?
My boy, I love it. And it's like, I love Paul. Paul and I have always just like 2 peas in a pod from the time we met each other. Like we've always just kind of hit it off. I love doing roundup with Paul, and I feel like it's a great way. It's just fun to like, I like studying and preparing for stuff, but it's nice to just have a platform where it's like, let's just sit and talk about fights. Like we're sitting at the bar having a beer. Like that's a lot of times, like, that's an interesting conversation that fans like to do. It's almost like you're chiming in on a conversation Paul and I would have. Maybe not as much swearing because YouTube's not into that, but it's fun. And I think that it's going to be a great, like roundup is going to be an asset for me down the road when I get to broadcasting, because Paul, we see guys move on in their lives and careers. Like, I see DC and Bisping and these guys, they're going to be around a long time. But eventually guys move out and others move in. And I think it's good. It's going to be an asset when the time comes that I become a commentator, because Paul and I are so comfortable communicating. Like when you're calling a fight, you can only speak X's and O's so much before you start to kind of have small talk. during the fight. Like if a guy is just sitting in half guard, not punching, like you can only say so many things before it turns into like, you know, the funny little jabs that go on at the desk. The things that me as a fan, the fan side of me, I enjoy those parts of the commentary when the guys are kind of prodding at each other or
I mean, I told Anik when he was on here, the highlight of every show is when we get Anik giggles.
Yeah,
like, something happens that makes the little Anik giggle come out.
Oh, dude, my favorite one was I forget who it was Felder, Bisping, and I think John. It was either John or Fitzy. I just kind of went blurry on you. There you go. It was I think it was Felder, Bisping, and I don't remember if it was Fitzy or John. But something happened in the fight, and like Paul was like, "Oh, I missed that. Like I couldn't get my and he said this like I couldn't get my eyes to go in two different places." And Bisping was like, "Yeah, dude, how do you think I feel? I was at home and I just lost it." So it's like with that type of talk, like I feel like it's like Roundup is going to be an asset for those types of moments when me and Paul are going to be in the booth together. And that's like certain little things I manifest, and I'm looking forward to that, you know. And it's like it's fun, you know. I tell people all the time, like if you're going to commit to this sport, you got to go like all in. Like you got to like, even if I would have fallen short and not got into broadcasting, like I would not regret it for a second, because we went all in. I try to maximize this short opportunity that comes and goes before you know it. So it's like, I feel fortunate that it paid off, and I still feel like I'm still progressing. So it's a lot of fun.
As somebody that's making this transition into the broadcast side of things, the media side of things to an extent, what are the challenges we as media are facing or coming up against with athletes now? And sort of what on the other side of that, what are the struggles that, you know, fighters are having with media right now? Because it feels for me, as somebody that's been doing this for well over a decade, we've gotten further away from each other over these last 5, 6, 7 years, where the involvement between athletes and outlets are sort of really limited. And I think that's actually a bad thing overall. But from your perspective, which I think is a very unique perspective, what are the contributing factors to that, and how do we remedy some of that?
Well, I think for one, I think you know, social media, I think gives fighters like their own space to like stretch their legs in, and maybe put out statements and say things without having the questions come, like just to kind of do it on their own terms. And I think that sometimes fighters are sometimes get a little like, it's one thing to do fight week media. I think some fighters just kind of like, you know, for me, I started shying away from media when I, you know, without naming an instance, because I can't, but like there was a certain some situation that happened in my career that like, that's all anybody ever wanted to talk about. And I was just like, I'm done there. Hi, I'm doing good. I got a fight coming up. Like, why aren't you asking me about that? You know, you only want to ask about that stuff. I think the biggest thing for fighters is there's a lack of trust, because you do an interview and the headline that comes out, it's like fans don't really read the stories. Like if what does a fan do when they go on MMA Junkie, or Bloody Elbow or MMA Fighting? Like rarely do they read the article. A lot of times they're scrolling through and they're just reading the headlines. So I think that that's where fighters have started to kind of build this type of resentment, where it's like, it's the headlines, you know, it's like, and I understand that. Like I can see both sides. I can, you know, I'm not a journalist, but broadcasting and journalism kind of go hand in hand. So I can see why you have to put a headline out there that's going to gain attention, because that's how you're going to get clicks, and that's how your article is going to gain traction. But from the fighter's perspective, I can understand where it's like, that's what I said, but that's not what I said. Like that's what I said is taken. Like you took a sentence, you took a segment from a sentence, you took a segment from a statement, I should say. You took a segment from a statement, made that segment the headline, and that doesn't tell the story of what I said. So I think that that's where a lot of fighters are building resentment towards MMA media, is because the headlines, you know, it's like it's not the stories, it's the headlines, you know, and you know, is there a way to fix that? Yeah. And it kind of goes on both sides for fighters. I think that they need to understand that, like, yes, the media, that's their job. That's how they provide for themselves. But it also, more exposure helps you. Like, the more, you know, you do interviews, you know, you can pick and choose. There's some people I won't do interviews with, and I'll tell them, like, there's two that I won't name. And it would be unprofessional of me to name these people, but I would never do an interview with them. Like, I don't trust you. You breach that trust multiple times. I'll never let you have. I'll never let you try have the service of doing an article on me or interview me. So I just think for fighters, it's like, you got to understand that any exposure is good exposure, but on the other side of things, for media people, it's like, you got to understand, like, fighters are some of the most sensitive people you'll ever meet. We are very sensitive people, whether a fighter wants to come to terms with that or not.
Right.
They're very sensitive people. So when you do an interview and the headline is spun so wrong, even though it's weird how that works. You know, you know this better.
I
than
mean,
anyone.
it's not weird how it
It's
works.
like,
it's bullshit
you can
how
take
it
a
works.
sentence and you can put it out in the headline verbatim, but what you put around it can really change what the message was really intended for. So I think that kind of goes on both sides. Fighters need to understand, you need to do interviews. It's good to have exposure. And for media people, you got to find a way to get those clicks and garnish and get the views on your articles without breaching the trust of the fighter with these ridiculous headlines.
One last thing I want to talk to you about before I let you get out of here, and I do appreciate all the time you have provided so far today. You are someone that, you mentioned Anthony Pettis a little earlier, the fight for Anthony Pettis. You step on the scale, you give one of these, you give one of these.
Yeah.
And you changed weight classes.
Yeah.
I know from talking to you throughout your career that getting down to 55 was torturous.
Yeah.
70, not as bad, certainly. A little easier.
Yeah.
Seem like you're in better spirits here, you know,
Yeah.
2 months out. What was the process like for you in making that decision, in getting to that decision to go up? And just generally speaking, I don't think we're ever going to solve weight cutting, but what are the things we can put in place, or what are the recommendations you would make even just to other athletes, some of these kids coming up at Jiu-Jitsu, to give themselves the best opportunity to not go through some of those difficulties that you went through getting to 55?
You know, for myself, I feel like I've started every answer, every question you answer. I'm like, well, for myself, but
I mean, truthfully, it's the right way to do it, because there's your experience, and then there's the broader general. It's perfect so far.
I came up in a time which I still call like the Miletich era of fighting, because it was the Miletich style of training, the Miletich approach to, like, you know, the way you sparred, the way you trained, the way you cut weight. Like, I came up at a time when, like, the norm was to cut the most amount of weight possible, to be as big as you possibly can, you know. And that kind of stuck with me for a long time. And it wasn't until the UFC Performance Institute really came about that I started to kind of learn that I'm fighting my body. Like, I was really like, I did like a DEXA scan, and they're like, dude, the threshold that your body can handle getting down to weight is literally like 156 pounds. Like, you cannot get any lower than that, or else you're like in the red. You're really pushing the limits in terms of, like, really damaging your body. I still wonder if I've done anything to my body that's gonna last a while, you know? So, you know, so it wasn't until the Pettis fight, the first fight before I got pulled from the fight in Brooklyn, everything was on track. I think that I was the day before weigh-ins. I was like 161, still in good spirit, still training hard. Like, I had a long camp. Like, I got noticed for that fight, like, in January. So I had, like, you know, that fight was supposed to be April 8th, I think.
Yeah.
So I had a long camp. So I had a lot of time to get my weight down. So I did it the right way. And then everything happened, you know, got pulled from the fight, gained a bunch of weight, started camp again to fight Pettis in July. And I just remember like the weight not coming off like I wanted it to. And I remember I was talking to Bo Sandoval, the former head strength and conditioning coach, the PI, which by the way, he's one of the greatest coaches I've ever had in my entire life. He's just a tremendous man. Can't give that guy enough praise. But I was just warming up for a workout and I was just like, you know what, dude, I'm going to win this fight and I'm going to go up. I think I'm just done. You know, I just think I'm fighting my body at this point. I'm starting to learn that I fell in love with lifting weights. It's became such a big part of my training regimen, and teach their own. You know, you're going to have the Khabibs and the people that say strength conditioning is pointless. You know, and the George St. Pierre evolved into that at some point in his career as well, but he went into the whole gymnastics thing. But, you know, for me and the success I've had, I feel like a lot of it can be attributed to strength conditioning. And that's I could get into that one for an hour as to why I think it's good. But, yeah, I just kind of like that in that moment was like, I'm going to win this fight and I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to win and go up instead of lose and go up. But obviously things don't always go according to plan, Spencer. You know, and I think I still would have made, I believe I still would have made the weight had I not broken my foot before that fight. I kicked an elbow, broke my foot like 10 or 12 days before the fight. But nonetheless, it's one of the best things that ever happened to me. And in that, now to today, right now, talking to you, I'm in great shape with a lot of time to go in my camp. I'm way ahead of the 8 ball in terms of, you know, peaking and everything's good. I'm still 192 pounds. So I'm like, maybe my swan song will be at 185, you know, who knows? But, you know, that process really just involved once that fight got over. I think the one mistake that people make when they go up a weight class is it's like, you can't just like continue to do what you're doing now and just think like, okay, I got some cushion to eat more food. Like, no, you got to build your body up
right.
and still have a weight cut. Like, that's just the reality of it. So I spent that whole summer eating and lifting heavy weights before the Carlos Condit fight. Like, really, like almost like the similar to like what a bodybuilder does. Like, we're talking every 2 hours, I mean, a huge meal, like 6 eggs and 2 cups of oatmeal for breakfast. It's like 16-ounce steaks and rice for dinner, like really just packing the weight on. That was the hardest. That was almost like I almost miss cutting weight because I'm having so much food.
Right.
Like, it really is like, it's so hard to go train and do all this stuff when you literally are packed full of food. But it was necessary. And I think that for fighters, like, you're always going to have to cut weight. Got to be a balance, you know. And I know that we're going through this whole debacle with the IVs and whatnot, but like, there's no perfect answer. That's the harsh reality of it.
Right.
Like, even if we do away with weight cutting, guys are still going to find a way to cut. Like the 1FC thing. You know how people cheat the hydration system for 1FC is you water load, you wait till you pee clear, and then you hold that piss and you suck all the water out of your body. So then when you go take that hydration test, that one piss, as long as you got a bladder full of clean piss, you're going to pass. But that's what I'm saying. There's no way to combat weight cutting.
Right.
So
it's a part of the sport. It's a part of combat sports. It's always going to be here.
Yeah. And you know what? And I'm a part of combat sports, and I'm always going to be here as well, baby. I ain't going anywhere. I'm here for the long haul. As a competitor, as a broadcaster, as a weight cutting advocate, however I can help, I'm going to be here. So
I love it.
It was awesome. I really appreciate you letting me come on. Long overdue, but I'm glad we did this.
Oh, before I get you out of here, we got a couple more little quick hitters here. So
yeah.
You mentioned getting into vinyl. What's the favorite album in the collection thus far?
Ooh, favorite album in the collection? Man, I really fell in love with side A of the Randy Rhoads Ozzy Osbourne live album. The only live performance, because I'm a big Ozzy Osbourne fan, and Randy Rhoads is like my guy. And that side A is like, I don't know, Crazy Train and Mr. Crowley. And it's just like, it's a slapper. So okay. I really like that one. Led Zeppelin 2 is really good. But yeah, that right now, that side A of that live tribute to Randy Rhoads, Ozzy Osbourne is pretty bad. That's a bad one. That's good.
What is it about me that made you not think that my drop to Eric Nixick's, hey, what's one song that as soon as it hits, you're in no matter what, as soon as you hear it, that when I said King Kunta by by K-Dot,
I love
you
it.
were like, oh my God, Spence is so much cooler than you just got cool points.
Dude, that's like
you didn't think I had that in my repertoire? You didn't think I had that in my arsenal?
I was surprised. That's like a big song for like me and my friends. That's like a out on the Lake Coeur d'Alene, like get the party jumping. That's a hitter. I like that. I like King Kunta a lot. So when I saw that, I was like, ooh, all right, Spencer, I see you out here, buddy. I like it.
I like that you pivoted quickly when Scott was like, hey, Spence has always been cool. You were like, yeah, but now he's cooler.
Yeah.
Appreciate the cooler. Clarifying that you always understood.
Yes, sir.
Favorite fight all time?
Man, that changes depending on what side of the pillow I wake up on.
Okay. So what are a couple that are in the running?
I mean, I love, now you're bringing out the fanboy in me.
Yeah.
Shogun versus Lil Nog in the the quarterfinals of the 2005 middleweight Grand Prix. I love that fight. Shogun and Lil Nog. I mean, both of those guys got very clipped hard. I mean, I remember, both as round 1 and round 3, a lot of clinch fighting, a lot of ground fighting, but the exchanges on the feet were really good. That's a fight I've always gone back and watched a lot. I love that
peak
fight.
Of his powers, Shogun.
Yeah, I mean, that's an incredible fight. Rory versus Robbie 2. I mean, I was watching it. I was at a viewing party with Julie Pena, and I had my shirt, and I was like biting through the collar of my shirt because it was just the craziest fight. So that was a good one. One of my favorite fights I've ever seen live. I was there when DC fought Gustafsson, and that was a really cool fight to see live. Like that was one of those live fights that was like when DC picked Gustafsson up in that crotch lift, and like I just saw Gustafsson, like
he went straight up.
I saw his cup go above the cage rail.
Yeah, he went straight up.
So that was a cool fight to see live. So you
were in Houston and you had gotten rid of the mullet because I remember walking past you in the Fighter Hotel and you being like, "What's up, bud?" And I was like, "I don't know who that is." And then I turned around and was like, "Mike."
That is
we're all cleaned up. Yeah, the hard part. You didn't look like you, but you look like how you're looking now.
I sold out for television, dude. I'm a sellout.
It's all right. We all have to do it at some point.
Right?
We're gonna have to start cleaning up the grays in here at some point, maybe. We'll see. I'm looking forward to it though. I want to get the salt and pepper going.
I want it all. I get it on the sides when my beard's long, and I'm like, just bring it all in. Like I'm ready for it. I'm married.
Noticing underneath the headphone bands, the sideburns are starting to go white. Yeah, and I was really excited about that the other day because I'm looking forward to this. Like, I spent years being the kid that was the baby face that people would be like, "There's no way you're late 20s, early 30s, whatever it is."
You got to embrace it.
I'm looking forward to it. I want to be able to be like, "See, I am actually old."
That's right.
I don't just act old. I am old. All right. Before we get you out of here, tell people when they can see you next, and then also where to follow you, how to stay up to date on everything you've got going on, and all of those things as we progress towards Li Jingliang later this spring.
So obviously all my social media platforms at MikeMav22. I'll be on the desk, not this weekend, but next weekend for Krylov versus Span. That'll be my last desk show before Miami. And then obviously April 8th. I'm not sure if I'm on the main card. I'm kind of hoping to be the last prelim on ABC, but nonetheless, you can catch me at UFC 287 against Li Jingliang. Really looking forward to making my return back to the octagon, and and we'll see what happens from there.
Return of the Maverick. We will get you back on this show at some point. I appreciate all the time, my man.
Thank you.
All the best these next couple of weeks. Stay healthy. Hope it all goes well. For Michael, I am Spencer. This has been a conversation with. We'll see you next week.